Hello, this is Kris Nelson for EvolveConsciousness.org. I'll be presenting some explanations of some infographics that I did in June 2014 and July 2014. I did not do any audios for these infographics previously, so I'm catching up and presenting it in a more descriptive format. I previously did 9 images related to causality, consciousness, and natural law. The next few images will deal with reality and our perception of reality, and how we can face reality more honestly in order to create and live in truth and morality, how to process reality in order to perceive it accurately, how we have perceptual distractions and live in insulated bubbles of reality, and this also affects natural law and our ability to live because we're not seeing the effects of reality properly because we're insulated, and that insulation keeps us ignorant in some ways, so we're continuing to be ignorant of natural law and ourselves, our own behavior and our own actions, and why we do things. And that creates a power differential. So that will be the last graphic, and then I'll have 3 final infographics to present as a conclusion on natural law aspects. So to start, we have the infographic. I have number 10. I'll continue from the last presentations. I'll just keep them in the same order. So number 10, perception of reality. So we have a window of perception. So we're looking through our window, and this is the window where we have, it's delusional. It's Maya, it's the fiction. This is what Maya is in Buddhism. It's not that reality is fictional, it's that the reality that we perceive and believe is real isn't actually the reality as it is. It's the reality as we project onto it and want it to be. So it's all the false images, the false perceptual constructs, the falsity that we perceive to be reality. So we think we have freedom, order, and peace. We got our jurors, we got people, putting bad guys away, we got the prosecutors and the defendants, and we got the judges. Everything's good, we're fighting evil. We got the politicians fighting evil and setting up good ways of living for us. We don't have to think about it ourselves. We got the police. He's good, they're all good like Santa Claus, peace and love and happiness, and yay, police are great, they're protecting us, we don't have to protect ourselves. And we got the schools, everything's good, we're all learning truth and morality, we don't need to teach our own kids, we can abdicate that responsibility too. And then in the end world, we're all living in freedom, peace, and order, we're all living in happy rainbow fantasy land. Yay! I live in a fantasy, I'm a new ager. Well, that's essentially what everybody is. Everybody just believes whatever they want because it makes them feel good. Otherwise, you'd have cognitive dissonance and you'd have to negotiate with reality to resolve the conflict of your perceptions with reality, to resolve the disharmony of your expectations with reality in order to make yourself feel good about your self-image and worldview again. So this is a reality veil, and it's systemic insulation. It's an insulation from seeing how things really are in order to get you to a position of empowerment. Going back to my previous presentation on empowering change, to get back to a previous position of empowerment through recognizing the condition of reality, that would empower you with that knowledge in order to want to change things. But when you're in this false perceptual construct of reality, you're in a systemic insulation because you're not seeing reality accurately and you're not seeing the need for reality to change. So at the bottom, I have bottom of this window. The window of false perception is insulating us from the consequences of our actions. So how are we going to change? How are we going to learn from our past mistakes if we're not actually facing the consequences of our actions? If we're insulated from the consequences of our actions, we are in a state of impossibility of actually knowing the consequences of our actions. Hence, we don't know the repercussions, the effects to our causes, and so we're causally outputting effects without understanding why we're doing it, or what it's creating, how it's affecting reality, and then reality is coming back and affecting us, and it bites us in the ass. So we keep creating ignorantly, and we think we're creating good, but we're creating evil, and then the evil comes back and bites us in the ass. That's how it's supposed to happen, for you to be able to recognize and learn from your past mistakes. That's why chaos is a teacher, because it teaches you. Natural law is ourselves teaching ourselves. It's all done by us. We create the actions which manifest as effects in the world. These in turn affect other people. Their actions affect other people. Everything affects us. We're all in this together. The consequences not known will perpetuate the same consequences. That's what we're living in. We're living in a fantasy world where no one's facing themselves. No one's facing reality. Not honestly, because they're living in insulated reality bubbles of their particular zones of comfort and convenience. Geographical zones of comfort and convenience. In other parts of the world, they're feeling the consequences of karma. They didn't do the harm, but us over here, we pay taxes. We have a big militarized. We have boogeymen. We have fantasy boogeymen to go chase after Osama and everybody and Saddam, and let's invade countries and murder. Yes, murder millions of innocent people. Murder children and women and men. Murder, and murder. And they're feeling the murder. They're feeling the karma. Other people's causes are affecting them. But is anyone on the planet living in truth and morality? No. Are we fighting for truth and morality? No. Those people over there, were they stopping America? No. Were they trying to educate things on truth? No. Were they stopping the war machine? No. They had their own war machine. They had their own corruption. Everyone just lets corruption go on in their own little areas because my little area, my geographic area is better than that one. In their minds, at least it's better than the other geographical area on the planet somewhere else. So I need to be happy and shut up and be happy with my self-enslavement and suffering. Just keep it going. So Saddam wasn't a great guy. People just let him control, and they didn't improve their lives. They still had bullshit laws and their religious bullshit that perpetuated evil and immorality, so they weren't stopping evil. So it's all aggregate. They didn't do anything to harm other people in the States and other countries, but they got invaded anyways. And that's the aggregate aspect of how we're all in this together, and it doesn't matter if you don't do wrong. By being ignorant, by letting evil perpetuate, by thinking you're doing good, by living in a veil of reality, by being insulated from consequences, you're going to keep it continuing. So they let their own ignorance continue, and then other people's ignorance affected them. But if everyone would stop being ignorant, then we would be in knowledge, and we wouldn't be creating consequences that we wouldn't be aware of. We'd be able to correct them right away. We wouldn't have other people creating consequences against us, because we would all be doing the same thing and removing the negatives. So there's people raped all over, there's children molested, and everything. They didn't do anything to deserve it. There's no reincarnation karma. Well, that's your past life and all this bullshit. No. I've explained this in the previous presentation on causality, consciousness, and natural law, summarizing some infographics I did in June in 2014. The karma we have is all of our actions together, and individually in your own life. You hit someone, they hit you back. That's karma. It's action and reaction, cause and effect. So on the global scale, no, the children didn't do anything, but what did their parents do to prevent evil? What did everyone in the planet currently now, the 7 billion people, what are we doing for the people who are going to come after us, who are reincarnations of ourselves as the true self, not as our lower self here as the ego personality identity construct? Whoopity-doo. That's born and dead, and then it's gone. What comes back is the true self, reincarnated as more individuated aspects. So you are me, and me is you, because we're all the same true self. Okay? So then, if we're all the same true self, then there's no individuated soul. There's no reincarnation in that respect. Afterlife, and you get to reincarnate from the afterlife? No. And you get your memory wiped? No. It's anthropomorphization of a force, and you're making it human. It's got its own identity. oh yeah, and it can think on its own, and it can recollect over the past life, and see where it went wrong, and balance the scales in the afterlife, and all this stuff. And then it gets to reincarnate, and it's going to reincarnate as a rock this time, or it's going to reincarnate as a victim, because last time it incarnated as a rapist, so now it's going to incarnate as a victim and experience it all, because it's all about experience. These are all pseudo-spiritual beliefs that are well constructed. I'll give them. People who construct these concepts are very masterful in human psychology. They understand things that will make people feel good about themselves, that will give them motivation, even if it's bullshit and it's based on an ungrounded belief framework. It's still going to motivate them because it makes them feel good. That's motivated on falsity. You're happy with your self-image and your position in the universe and worldview, and how you in your sense of self and your sense of reality, because of this fantasy belief system that makes you feel so special, makes you feel like you're so valuable and infinite worth. You do have infinite value and infinite worth, but it only comes when you actualize it and manifest it into reality. The way that they're valuing themselves is by doing nothing. All it is casting a spell on your own mind to convince yourself of something that isn't true. You believe it to be true, and it makes you feel good about yourself. That's what these beliefs are. So karma, reincarnation, completely wrong. People who get raped and shit, no, they didn't do anything wrong to deserve it. But it's part of how we aggregately create reality. All of us allowed these people to exist. How come the way we live, how come we're not teaching truth and morality that would prevent people from being rapists? That would teach truth and morality that would have self-respect, self-knowledge, self-love, self-care, and self-responsibility developed as soon as you're born. That would be part of training as soon as you're born until it's ingrained in you and into a young age. Then you can develop your own learning capacities. We're not doing that, so we're letting people become rapists, we're letting people become murderers, because we're not teaching people about reality and ourselves. So what does it come back on? It comes back on ourselves. The karma is everybody. Does the child know anything? No, it can't teach anybody, so it's sure as hell not responsible for teaching other people how not to rape. It doesn't even have that knowledge. It needs to be taught what to do and what not to do. But then it gets raped, or it gets beaten and physically assaulted, and then the victim and perpetual the abuse victim cycle kicks in, and then they can get stuck in more lack of self-respect, self-knowledge, self-love, self-care, and self-responsibility. Then they get trapped in, well, I'm a victim, I can, and then I'll be a victim again, or I can be the perpetrator and abuse and no longer be the victim. Now I'm empowering myself. So it's all delusional lies, and we convince ourselves of things so that we can cope with reality and make sense of it. So the abuse victim, someone who got raped, it's not their fault. The people before didn't raise their children. No one's raising anybody. No one's raising themselves. It's a pathetic world we live in. This is the karma. It's not that people deserve what they get. It's that we're all creating the world of influence and how we affect each other. There's rapists because people aren't creating people to be non-rapists. They let people become whatever they want to believe. They let them get abused, become victimized, and instead of healing people who become victims, they let them become perpetrators and aggressors and abusers and dominators and controllers. We're never healing people. And those that become dominators, if we can't heal them, we're never putting an end to evil to remove them from existence, and then they're going to keep perpetuating evil. Or we come up with, let's create a little box and put them in the ground, call it prison, and okay, well, you can steal from us, so we'll keep feeding them into life, even though some of them are pure evil and shouldn't even exist. But we're going to keep doing that. We don't want to heal people who got hurt, and the people who can't be healed, who are so damaged, who are possibly biologically damaged or organically damaged in the structure of their organism, well, they can't be saved. so you can't do anything for them. But the people who can be healed, well, we're not healing them. We're not educating people in preventative healing measures, in true knowledge, in the true self, self-knowledge, truth and morality, same thing. We're not educating people in that, so no wonder they turn into psychopaths, dominators and controllers, being abused and turning into abusers. It's all us. We're doing it all. So I'm not doing it to someone else. I've taken myself out, but I have a responsibility to educate others on how not to do it. And that's truth and morality. If you need to heal, well, I may not be the expert on healing, but if you need to heal, then you can learn how to heal. And the information that I'm presenting is the basic steps on how you can bring yourself to a position of empowerment so that you can heal yourself. Otherwise, you're going to be dependent on others your whole life because you're going to be ignorant on causality, consciousness, and natural law, on how you can even heal yourself. And it just keeps perpetuating into the future. You're not healing yourself because you're ignorant. You don't want to learn. And then other people will continue to be ignorant and be hurt by other people who are hurting them because they didn't want to learn. And the people who got hurt, well, maybe some of them are... Well, there's only few of us who actually care for truth and learn because of the chaos we face that acts as a catalyst to motivate us to learn, and because we admitted how wrong we are, how fooled and screwed and idiotic we were, that we wanted to learn and not be fooled anymore. We want to be right rather than be wrong. We've learned how we are wrong, and we don't want to be wrong anymore. It's not about ego. It's about letting go of ego. When you want to be right and not wrong, it's about letting go of ego. I don't want to live in my ego of blindly believing I'm right when I'm wrong. I want to align with the true self, the higher will, and learn what is truth, right, good, natural law, morality, so that I can align, embody, unite, harmonize, and become it in my life, to exemplify it and live it, to be it. And that's how you become and be the true self. So, reality veil, the systemic insulation. It's abdicating personal responsibility. It's an insulation from facing chaos and correcting it. It's a predetermined, controlled path. You just keep perpetuating the same cyclical loop because you're not getting out of it. You're not able to see how it's bullshit to even want to escape, to even learn how to escape, to even be able to act in a way to escape through a care for truth to get out of that loop, which was in the Care for Truth infographic in the last presentation. You need care for truth to learn, to understand, to act properly. Without that, you don't have anything, and you keep going around in circles. The predetermined path of the indoctrinated, impositioned, conventional information of the normalized acceptability that you think that's the way things are and that's the way they're going to continue to be because you're in learned helplessness and you don't know how to change things. You don't think things can be changed, so you keep doing things the way they are and you keep perpetuating the same controlled path there is. And there's no change in here, and you're living a life of illusion. All these things that you think are good in this reality veil, it's all a false perceptual construct, and it's an illusion. But if we choose to look at reality truth, to have an accurate perception of what is, to see the slavery, control, and war, well, then we need to open those veils. We need to open that cloudy, dirtied window. We need to open that messy thing so we can see, instead of seeing through the lenses, this can also be likened to rosy-colored glasses. So instead of seeing through rosy-colored glasses, we take off the rosy-colored glasses and we see reality as it is. So open the window, stop looking at the images painted on the window, the false appearances, and open the window and look at the substance of reality that's behind the facade, behind the appearances, behind the mask that's presented to you, by the shades on the window. So open the window and look at reality objectively. Look at it for what it is. So you lift the veil to see the true condition. So instead of being free, well, we're all slaved. We're all enslaved. We're having our energy harnessed from us like in the Matrix, okay? Because that's what the predetermined and controlled pathways are. They are predetermined, controlled pathways to divert the currency of our time and attention. The currency is an energy. The time and our attention is diverted. We are kept in a coffin, in a tomb, blinded, which is why after Neo wakes up, saying, why do my eyes hurt? Because it's the first time you're using them. Because before you were blind in the coffin, in the ground, in the earth, buried and dead. You are a dead, a walking dead. You need to wake up from that slumber. You need to see reality as it is. You need to see that in your dead, blind state, you've been living predetermined and controlled paths where pre-selected avenues of survival are presented in order to channel your creative potential into a specific agenda that is not in alignment with the values and virtues we want to have. So this is seeing television as it is. Keeps you docile, keeps you distracted, and the beta waves, I think, or alpha waves, I think it's beta. I forget. The television emits waves that puts you into a more receptive, hypnotic state, so you're not thinking critically, you're not processing things. So we have our children who are that has it's a picture of a baby with a bunch of logos. So you have Nike and McDonald's and I don't know, a bunch of stuff. So we're all basically being conditioned. Our false selves, the ego personality identity construct, is being imposed with a false self from the normalized acceptability of reality, which is represented as the reality veil, the false perceptual construct. Those appearances, those false appearances, inauthentic, unexamined appearances, get imposed onto us through television. They shape us into who we become, into ego personality identity constructs, focused on materialism, focused on the physical, focused on products and labels and identity labels. That's why we get our identity shaped that way. And then the world we get as a result is people who are ignorant, in fear of truth and apathy of truth. They're in confusion as a result. They don't know what to do. They think things are okay, but they're not okay. They're not able to see the consequences to their actions, so they keep perpetuating the same cycle. And when you perpetuate the same cycle, built on falsity from your ignorance, you will get a progressive degeneration into entropy, a progressive stagnation, a progressive chaos development and manifestation. So we have an increasing police state, a militarized police force. There's wars going on. There's children and women being blown up. Israel is like the worst country in the world for that. It's just ongoing and it keeps going downhill, but people don't want to face it, which will be in the next presentation on the big natural law infographics I have, which will take some time to explain, but we keep going downward, and the only way up is through care for truth, seeking truth, embracing truth, embodying truth, and then sharing it and speaking it and preaching it to others so they can do the same. Otherwise, we're going to keep going down the accurate perception of reality, which is we're going to stay dead and blind. We're going to keep being indoctrinated and imposed with ego personality identity constructs from television and artificial appearances that create us into fake humans, into false selves, which perpetuate falsity, evil and chaos and immorality through that fear of truth, apathy for truth, ignorance of truth, cowardice of truth, and laziness to act in truth and morality that allows evil to continue, because also the ignorance creates confusion, and the confusion breeds control. The external control is what all the chaos is all about, because people don't want to learn truth and morality, and then there's evil, and we don't want to educate each other on consciousness. We just want to keep smashing evil down and allow people to keep creating evil so we can keep smashing them. We don't want to get people to stop creating evil so that we don't have any evil to smash down. We just want to keep people to create evil so that we can have a justification for the need to smash evil through these centralized authority gang thug institutions of police and military and government. You need to create a problem in order to need your solution to be implemented, the Hegelian dialectic, problem, reaction, solution. So you need to have people in ignorance and confusion, whereby they manifest in immorality and evil and not truth and morality, so that you have the need in yourself for external control. Because there's ignorance and confusion, you don't know what to do. Because you don't have control internally, you seek control externally. And as a result of seeking external control through a lack of understanding truth and morality, you end up creating immorality, and that immorality breeds more immorality and the need for more external control. So you see how it's a progressive degeneration into more and more stagnation and entropy and chaos? That's why it's a cycle, it's a loop. And we care for truth. It's the hamster wheel of life. We stay trapped in our problem and condition because we don't seek the way out. So the next infographic, number 11. This is Alchemical Divorce, part 1. There's a second part, which is like the reverse. So if we look at the previous infographic, we have the false veil and then we have the real veil. So here we have a false veil, which is we're looking through the window and we're seeing a picture. Oh, it's an angel and everything's green and everything's great, but we need to puncture through those holes in order to see the reality behind, which is the horror of the reality, the evil that we create, the immorality that we create. So you need to look past the angel and see the demon that we are. See the demon of reality that we've created. See the shadow, demon, darkness, negative, evil, and immorality inside of us and in reality itself. Because as long as we live in the false appearances of that fake picture we're seeing, and we don't pierce through it, we're going to continue to create our own self-inflicted suffering and enslavement. So, Alchemical Divorce, part 1, is the divorce, apophysis, negation, and deconstruction of false perceptual reality. So, divorce means you have to detach from that false perceptual reality. All that feel good, everything's perfect, the positivity mask of the angel in the green and everything's good, well, you need to divorce it. You need to divorce yourself from that. You need to apophysis, say no to it. You need to negate it, negate the falsity of the false beauty you see, of the false goodness. You need to deconstruct it. So the delusion of false perceptual reality. We don't just get to the light by thinking we already have it. We have to first face the darkness. So you think you're already in the light, you think your life's perfect, New Ager? No, it's not. You have to actually face the darkness underneath you, inside of you, that's in reality that you're not looking at, in order to live in light. Because right now, this is a false light construct. It's in the illusion of appearances. There's light, you could say light is being used to create a hologram, a fictitious reality, a world of images and illusions, using false light. And you need the real light, which can only come about through looking at the darkness and casting the real light into it. And then you can build yourself and live in the real light. But right now, we're not living in the real light. Right now, we're living in the falsity of light, in a projection of light that isn't light. It's the appearance of good and truth. People are easily fooled by appearances of good. So in the Soren Kierkegaard quote, there's two ways to be fooled: by accepting what is not true and by rejecting what is true. So this is, you're accepting what isn't true as truth. You're accepting false light as light. But it needs to be deconstructed, and the darkness needs to be seen first. So we need to break false perceptions of reality to face the shadow, demon, darkness, negative, and evil. If we want to actually live in true freedom and peace, then we have to destroy the false perceptions we have of ourselves and reality to face the current darkness and shadow. We must fall before we can rise, burn before we are reborn. So we must fall to the darkness, fall to the chaos, in order to have a catalyst to allow us to rise. Because when you're in the false reality, in the false perception, in the false light, you're not going to rise. You don't even see a need to rise. You don't see a need to change. So you have to fall in order to realize that what you thought you were standing on was not solid. It was not a solid foundation. You need to fall first. That solid foundation wasn't real. What's going to make you realize it's not real, it's not solid? By crumbling, by it shattering and falling apart and making you fall on your ass, fall on your face, break your neck, whatever, break your back, break your leg. Not literally, but it's got to hurt. You're going to have some chaos. You're going to have some suffering and pain. Then maybe you're going to realize that you're not actually where you think you are, and that you have some work to do to get where you want to be, where you thought you were previously. To get to the actual values and virtues that you want to embody, that you previously thought you were already embodying. You were living in a delusion, an illusion, a false light construct. Well, now you can realize that the light wasn't really light, it was just lies. And now you can actually seek the true light of truth, to cast away the darkness and shadow, to disintegrate it and purify it, so that you can be reborn from that burning, from that light of truth that burns away the evil and the immorality and the darkness, shadow, the demon. It burns it away, and then you can be reborn like the phoenix who burns itself and falls into ashes, where you can separate the good from the bad, the wheat from the chaff, and then reconstitute yourself anew, reborn as a new phoenix. And then you burn yourself again when there's something evil, and you take it away, and you rebuild yourself. It's a continual process from birth to death, at least not from birth, because you don't have the conscious capacity developed in your physiological body vehicle yet. But as soon as you're able to, that's what it's about. Making sure you're aligned with truth and falsity, and not with making sure you're aligned with truth and morality, and not with falsity and immorality, with good rather than evil, with right rather than wrong. It's continual examination of yourself. So we have the front pane, which is the front window, which is the worldview, the self-concept, the self-image, the delusion of false percepts. And then behind that we have hidden, denied, veiled, obfuscated reality, and that's the hell to face. Because we're not facing the hell we've created. We're living in a delusion of heaven, a delusional light construct, light appearances, holograms, fakeness. We're living in fakeness. It's a fake representation of reality appearances. And that's what we have on our windows. We need to poke out those puzzle pieces, those fake falsity parts of our understanding of reality, so that we can see the true nature of reality and then finally heal. So when we poke through, we remove falsity, and it pierces into an aspect. Removing falsity pierces into an aspect of veiled reality. So you remove a piece, poof, you see back into the truth of our current condition as it is, which is, instead of green grass, it's dead ground. Everything's dying and decaying. But people don't want to look at that because it's uncomfortable. And that would require them to actually realize that there's a need for change. They don't want to fall. They don't want to feel the suffering and the pain. They don't want to be burned by reality. So they want to keep living in the delusion of reality. In the delusion of unreality as reality, which is the false light construct as if it were the real light. So false truth as if it were truth. So an information catalyst that provokes disturbance and puts pressure on our false conceptions can bring us to shatter these lies, to shake the false perceptions of reality, to poke holes through the veil. That's what I'm talking about when I'm saying tension, pressure, conflict, interference, disturbance, chaos is what we need in our lives, is what we need to invoke in other people's lives. They're going to not like us, they're going to hate us, they're going to bitch at us, but we're trying to help them because truth is love. But they don't get it because they're so attached to falsity, they're so attached to evil and immorality, there's so much in a false self and an ego, in a calcified ego state in darkness, that they can't recognize the truth. And the truth against falsity produces tension, conflict, disturbance, pressure, interference. Truth interferes with falsity. Truth is the sword that destroys falsity. So when they're attached to falsity and the calcified ego attached to darkness, and we are the light, bringing them the light, shining on the darkness. It's blind, it hurts, it creates conflict, it creates pain, it's a catalyst, but they don't want the catalyst. They don't want to feel reality. They don't want to feel the cognitive dissonance for what it is, as a warning that you're in contradiction with reality, with truth. They take the cognitive dissonance as, oh, well, you're mean. I'm hurting, so you're mean to me. You're a bad person. Only because you provided them with the discomfort and pain and suffering of having to face the disequilibrium of their expectations and perceptions of reality not matching up with reality as it actually is. So image number 12, continuing from the last presentation there. So I guess this would be image number 3. In this one, it's Alchemical Divorce Part 2. So this is divorce, apophysis, negation and deconstruction of the false shadow, the false self, shadow, darkness, demon, and negative. So instead of divorcing from false reality, which is the false light, now we're seeing reality as it is. Those will go at the top right. So now instead of our pain, the first window is facing the window to the shadow, darkness, demon, negative, evil parts of ourselves and reality. Previously, the delusion of light and heaven and the angel, that was false. There was very little that was real. It was false. But now we're seeing the reality. We're seeing the darkness, the demon, the evil, as it really is in reality. There's not falsity here. We're seeing it. Parts of ourselves and reality. And then behind it is the potential reality we can create. The heaven to create in the way. This is true freedom and peace. The previous one wasn't the real heaven. It was falsity. It was a false construct, false light. You need to face the darkness. You need to fall. You need to get burned so that you can rise and get reborn. And this is the part that we have to face. We have to face the darkness, demon, negative, evil, immoral, so that we can afterwards drop the creation of falsity, evil, and immorality. We can stop doing it, and that's represented by poking a hole in it, by dropping it, disintegrating it away, and then we're automatically going to manifest the true freedom and peace, the heaven, the potential reality. See, it's not so much about creating new things, it's more about stopping to do the old and the current, more than it is with an infatuation in new, an infatuation with the novelty. It's about stopping the habits, stopping the old and current behaviors and wrongs we're doing. That will automatically generate the good. Because if you do not stop the evils and the wrongs, and you try to manifest the good, you're working incorrectly, you're working ignorantly, you're working foolishly. Trying to create good while allowing evil to perpetuate is contradictory. The left hand is working against the right hand. And you think that is a non-contradictory, united, integrated, harmonized self? No, that is not. That is a disconnected, contradictory, conflicting, oppositional self. Not harmony when you have your left hand doing contrary values and virtues as opposed to the right hand which is trying to uphold them. You're a split personality. So we have facing the darkness of reality. Facing the shadow and darkness will allow us to actually reach the light and create with it. It is a weeding out of the garden in order to allow fruitful manifestations to be created, grow, and prosper. Fall to hell to rise to heaven. Continually facing the darkness in us allows us to sublimate the shadow and build ourselves and the world in alignment with truth. It is a vitriolic, deconstructive, dissolving, disassembling process that takes time, energy, effort, dedication, determination, persistence, true care, courage, and will to realize and actualize more right ways of living. So that's why it's vitriolic, it's an acid, it's deconstructive, dissolving, because you're poking away the falsity, you're dissolving it, you're removing it from your life, from creating it into existence. But before you faced it, how were you possibly going to remove yourself from creating something you were not aware that you were creating? That's the problem with the ignorance of the world and people who don't look into understanding evil and wrong and falsity and immorality. They just want to look at the good. Be a stupid New Ager then. Never understand how to create reality. You won't be able to create true unity with these people. So we're removing false ways of living that actualizes more unification with truth. Which is what I said, it's less about creating new things and it's more about removing the old garbage. We need to clean ourselves internally. If you're not going to clean yourself, then what does it matter? You're still dirty. You're going to be trying to create clean things on the exterior, but you're dirty inside, you're going to keep creating dirt. So once the shadow is faced and acknowledged, we can then begin to deconstruct, dissolve, sublimate, transmute, shatter, etc. Those aspects that do not serve us. We alchemically burn to rise from our ashes, go to greener pastures better than before. So the next infographic is a long one. So hopefully this won't take too long. But we have our perception versus reality. How are we facing reality? Are we acknowledging the light and dark in ourselves and the world? Or are we denying it? So you can see how this flows from my previous infographics. Are we facing the mirror? Are we facing the light and dark? Are we dispelling ourselves of the bullshit delusion of reality we've convinced ourselves or been convinced that is real? Are we actually looking at the darkness, the demon, the evil? Or are we denying it and remaining in that false projection of illusions of reality? So we have to face reality as it is. We have to get to the demon darkness. And then when we face it, then we can dissolve it, disintegrate it, and become that true heaven, the true light, the true angel. So I'll just go left and right before I go down the middle into the infographic. So on the left we have reality and perception is in disunity and disharmony. So if we have our consciousness in blue, if you look at cause and effect in the future that I'll bring up, or internal and external, I'll use that instead, which I've already done in the trinity of consciousness from the previous presentation, infographic number 2. Reality is in red, that's the external, and perception is internal, the subjective world, and that's consciousness in blue, internal. And they're in disunity, disharmony because they're not aligned. But when you bring reality and perception aligned into an equilibrium, well, what happens when you join the blue and the red? Well, you get purple. So that's not exactly right. In the color spectrum, the opposite of purple is green, though. So when you join blue and red in the color spectrum, you'll get purple, and the opposite, or complement, whatever, however you want to look at it, would be green. But when you mix two colors, when you look at the color spectrum itself from high to low, what's in the middle is green. So I'm just using it in color symbolism in terms of internal, external. And when you unify the internal, external, like you unify the left, red, right brain, and the blue, right brain, well, the red and the blue would create the green, unified one eye, right? So this is just color symbolism in a specific way. So specific, internal, external, or left and right, unified, and it creates a green. That's what I'm talking about. So we have our reality, objective reality with subjective reality, harmonized together so they reflect each other accurately. That brings you to a point of equilibrium with reality, rather than a disunity and disharmony where your expectations and perceptions are not in alignment with how reality actually is, which is what I've been talking about in the past 3 infographics. It's about aligning our perceptions with reality. So that's what this represents. And cognitive dissonance is a disequilibrium internally as a result of disequilibrium between reality and perception of reality, which is disunity. So when your perception of reality and reality doesn't match, that's going to create a disharmony and a disunity, which also reflects inside because you're not able to harmonize your actions with reality, since you're not perceiving reality accurately. So you're going to create manifestations that are not in harmony. And this will put you So as a result of not being in harmony in your perceptions of reality, you don't create in harmony with reality. So you're in disequilibrium with reality and disequilibrium within yourself. So you're going to have cognitive dissonance. And that's why reality and perception, when you have a disharmony, it creates cognitive dissonance, because the perception and the expectation you had within your subjective reality of yourself is not the same as the objective reality that exists in the world outside of you. So cognitive dissonance happens. Someone tells you a truth about reality that you don't want to hear because your perceptions and expectations and what you want and desire out of reality is not in alignment with what the person told you. So there's a disunity. That's a cognitive dissonance. A dissonance is created between your expectations, your desires, your wants, your perception, and what actually is. So that creates a conflict. So if we go into reality, go down to sensory input, the info. This is the grammar input stage to get the knowledge. And then we have internal processing, filtering and processing. This would be the logic to understand. Just a basic understanding. Not even, this would be inductive logic in order to process data in some connected capacity, not a greater connected capacity of deductive logic and greater processing and understanding. This is just an initial. It's a preliminary comparison. It's an initial thought processing. It's not higher order in-depth logic, but it's an initial cursory processing that we all should do, comparison, to see if there's contradictions. Now, people who don't even engage in this preliminary thing, they accept beliefs unquestioningly, and then they have a bunch of contradictory beliefs in their understanding of reality, and that's where the confusion is, and then they create in contradiction with reality because they don't understand reality because of the conflict they have with reality in their understanding. If you don't understand reality properly, you're not going to be able to create properly in reality. And then you're going to create problems from that confusion, which is going to be wrongs and immoralities and evil. So a preliminary comparison is to just immediately see if you have conflicts in the new information coming in with what you previously have accepted. So it's initial thought processing. So this is where we take the processes coming in, and we're comparing them with our preconceptions, our preferences, our beliefs, wants, wishes, desires, and habits. So that's the next part in the flowchart. Then, that's where I was saying the contradiction happens. This is where cognitive dissonance kicks in. That's why I put it in red here. We have a conflict or contradiction between reality and desires, between new info and accepted info. So between the new and the old. So do we have a conflict? Do you have emotional cues, anxieties, guilt, shame, anger, embarrassment, stress, or maybe you don't even have any emotional cues? It's possible. So do you have this? Is there a conflict between reality, between the new info and what you have accepted previously as what was true? If yes, or if no. So if there's no conflict, well, we'll get to that after. Yeah. So if yes or no, that's where we get to the next two bubbles, where we're either dealing with the disintegrity or not. So if there's no conflict, then there's no dealing. Not yet. There's no conflict, then we need to determine, what do we do with the conflict? So if there is a conflict, we have to question and doubt ourselves in info. Are we curious about the veracity of the new info? So if we doubt, question, and are curious, we get to go to critical thinking and imagination process to verify what we've input. So if there's a conflict, are we curious enough about the conflict within us to determine if what we believe is actually true, or if it's false and reality is actually true? So if we do, then we go down to yes. And that's the middle part of critical thinking and imagination process. We process more info. Now we're trying to resolve the conflict. Contradiction. So we're in discernment, evaluation, assessment, judgment. And from here we have three possibilities. We have what is possible, probable, and actual. So since we have a conflict, and we're trying to resolve it, we're trying to determine the veracity. The new information or the old can be reevaluated, reassessed, and judged. So it's either possible, the new information is possible, and the decision of whether it's true or not is on hold. And then we condition ourselves into the perception that it's possible. Now, if instead of possible we determine it's probable, then we usually accept the input, but with a little bit of doubt still, because it's not an actual, so it's not completely agreed and accepted. It's only a probable, so there's still a bit of doubt. We accept it, but there's doubt. We accept it because it makes sense, because it's probably true. Not that it's possibly true, like anything can possibly be true, where we still have to wait for our decision. This one's probably true. So we accept it, but with some doubt. We remember that, there might be some issues. We haven't looked into it fully enough. It's not conclusive enough. And we condition ourselves into accepting that probable aspect of the reality being probable. So our perceptions will align with the probable reality. Now, if we've determined that it's an actual fact that's being presented as new, that we had a contradiction with, well, now we've determined that it's actual after we've spent some time to process and evaluate it. It's actual. We agree and accept the input. Now we condition ourselves that that input is actually what is as reality. Our perception of reality matches with reality now. Now what we think is what is, because we verified it. Now we're grounded in reality. Now, contrarily, if we go back up to cognitive dissonance, and there's no conflict between the new information and the old. So that means there's no conflict. It's harmonizing with everything we've already accepted as true. So now, do we question it, and do we still verify it? Even if there's no contradiction between the new information and what we previously accepted, do we question it? Are we curious, and do we want to be voracious to validate that new information? Not just simply accept it. If yes, then again, the same thing. Even if we had contradiction, and we want to be curious about the contradiction to verify it, we still have to go through critical thinking. And if we don't have a contradiction, we should still verify the information coming in. Even if it's non-contradictory, we should still verify it and determine if it's possible, probable, or is reality, grounded in reality. Because we can verify it through reality, through the particulars of reality. We're not just in blind, inductive accepting of what ideas and concepts are fed to us. We're actually going to verify it. But if you choose not to verify it, then you're engaging in an error where you're not verifying the new information which does not contradict with your old information. So you're engaging in uncritical belief. You're just accepting it on blind belief, simply because it does not contradict and conflict with previous information you've accepted. But that's the way to being a fool too. So you're agreeing and accepting that input, and you're conditioning yourself to the perception of reality as it appears, because that input wasn't verified. You didn't look at it with the clarity of observation, with the introspection of the burning vision of your mind. You didn't pierce it with your vision to verify it. You uncritically accepted it and agreed to it, and then you condition yourself, your perception of reality as it appears. But it could be true or false. Now, the only one that's right is when you conclude something as actual, because you've verified and grounded in reality, and then your perception of reality as it is, not the perception of reality as it appears. The appearance of reality could be as it actually is, but it could be a false appearance too. So that's why you can't just engage in uncritical belief. Now, when you have cognitive dissonance and you choose not to verify it, then you end up in the worst place possible, which is the cognitive dissonance process itself. So rather than verifying it when you had cognitive dissonance, or not verifying it when you had no cognitive dissonance and accepting it because it wasn't conflicting with anything else, you have conflict, but you're not going to go verify if the new information is true or not. You're just going to continue to believe what you previously believed, and you're going to engage in reality negotiation. This is where you're an arbiter of truth. You believe whatever you want to believe. And this is self-delusion. You lie to yourself. Self-deception. You don't want the truth because you don't care for truth and morality. You believe whatever you want to believe because you act as an arbiter of truth. What you want to believe, your perceptions dictate reality. So we sustain, maintain, and protect our beliefs and desires. Because that's what we were matching up at the beginning. We were matching up reality as it was coming into us compared to our preconceptions and preferences and desires and beliefs. We've matched them up. We're trying to match them up, and that's what creates the contradiction. Now, when we're in here, we're ignoring the fact that there's a contradiction and the need to verify the information. We're just negotiating with reality to remove the cognitive dissonance, the disharmony, the disequilibrium between our perceptions and reality. We're trying to remove that difference, the space difference between the red and the green. We're trying to create that green, the red and the blue. We're trying to create that green by reducing that distance. We're trying to negotiate with reality so that we convince ourselves that reality actually looks like the way we want it to see in the projected beliefs and desires we have. So we reject contrary evidence because of this. This is the backfire effect. Because of our attachment to sustain, maintain, and protect the previous beliefs and desires that are most likely being used as an aspect, as a basis for our ego personality identity constructs, it backfires. The facts of reality will backfire upon people speaking the facts and speaking the truth because there is such an attachment to ourselves. There's such an attachment to our false selves. We're not attached to the truth and morality, which is representative of the true self. We're attached to the false selves, representative of falsities and beliefs that are not grounded in reality. And we just choose to maintain them because they make us feel good about ourselves and our position in the universe, which is where the whole New Age deception comes in, and convincing people of all these things and beliefs, and just so that you can negotiate with reality to construct an unreality, a perception of reality, an appearance of reality that matches how you want things to be. Rather than actually live in how things actually are, you want to reshape reality and how you want things to be. That's why people believe, they desperately want to believe, that their thoughts directly create reality. That their thoughts change reality and alter reality. It has nothing to do with actions. It's just your thought. It's just like magic. Because we're gods and we get to alter reality, yeah. Because that's what people actually want. You see, it's not that that's actually the reality. It's that people want to believe that they are gods, that they can alter reality just by thinking it, that they don't have to act to change things. They can just believe whatever they want, be an arbiter of truth, that they're a god, and that creates the reality they want. That the things you think about, if you want to see the reality as rosy-colored and perfect, well, that's what you're going to see. If you convince yourself of that, if you negotiate with reality, ignore certain aspects of reality, focus only on the positivity mask, the optimism bias, well, that's all you're going to see, and you're not going to see reality as it is. Because new info does not matter. Reality as it is does not matter to you. You're only interested in sustaining your attachment to your ego personality identity construct, which is based on false beliefs, and you're attached to them and you won't let go of them. So then after that, you engage in excuses, justifications, deflections, dismissals, avoidance, ignorance. Ignore, deny, refuse, reject, excuse, justify, deflect, dismiss, avoid. Do whatever you can to wash away the truth of reality conflicting with what you want reality to be. So someone tells you something you don't want to hear, you'll excuse it, justify, deflect, dismiss, avoid, ignore, deny, refuse, reject. You'll do whatever dismissive techniques you can, cognitive dissonance, self-deceptions, reality negotiation, whatever you can to convince yourself. See, first of all, it's about convincing yourself. Then after you convince yourself, then you can easily lie to other people. The easiest part is to lie to yourself, and then after that, it's really easy to lie to others. Because if you're not lying to yourself and you know the truth, then it's hard to lie to others because you know the lie. But if you convinced yourself of the lie, then it's really easy to project it and keep perpetuating falsity because you can't face the truth. You can't face yourself in the mirror. So you're going to excuse, justify, deflect, dismiss, avoid, ignore, deny, refuse, reject. You're just going to run from the truth. Then you're going to make the other person into the bad one. You're going to say, oh, you're bad, you're judgmental, you just want to be right, and you're trying to be superior. This is what the whole argument is from New Agers I live with, from people who don't want to face how wrong they are, who can't face the mirror. This is all carnists. Most of the carnists on Facebook engage in this. It's all projection of their own insecurities, of their own inability to face the mirror properly and self-respect, and therefore develop true self-knowledge about themselves, which would allow them to gain self-love and self-care, and that would allow them to care more for other beings. And then finally, have the self-responsibility to change your ways of living. But they don't want to change, and that's why they continue to ignore the self-knowledge and the self-respect. They don't want to look at themselves because that would require them to change. If you actually look at yourself and recognize how wrong you are, how evil you are, how corrupted you are, how much of a piece of shit you are, then you're going to actually want to change. But as long as you ignore who you are, how you are choosing to manifest yourself in this reality, then you're going to keep creating that condition into forever. Everyone will. You'll never change and you'll die being a piece of shit, immoral, and motherfucker. Yeah, I had to just say that. Because people are idiots. They just want to excuse, deny. Anytime you have people denying reality, and it's a clear projection of their own insecurities because they do not face the mirror in true self-respect to look at themselves honestly, their own behavior. Because they have not looked at truth and morality honestly, which was a catch-22 self-perpetuating loop into chaos and entropy, you know. They can't look at themselves in the mirror honestly to face how they're doing wrongs. So they want to keep the false image of being good, and then they can't face truth and morality because whenever the truth and morality is presented to them, cognitive dissonance kicks in where they're too attached to the false self-image and false worldview, where they can't face themselves in the mirror honestly with that truth because they're denying it because they're too attached to themselves, which is because they can't face the mirror. So it's all circular. It's all up to each one of us. And the only way right now we can help people is by acting as influence to affect them. As we affect reality, we can also affect other people by our actions of a less physical nature, but of a verbal force, a vibratory force of speech to affect and influence them in their lives so that they can get out of this. The biggest thing is care for truth. You have to bring people to an understanding of chaos and evil and immorality in the world so that they can care to change it. And the only way this is going to happen is by tension, conflict, disturbance, interference in their lives to interfere with their false self as a true self who expresses truth and morality. Truth, love, good, right, morality, natural law. Express that to them and how they are failing to live up to what is good, right, and true. How society is failing to live up to good, right, and true. How we are a reflection of what society makes us and how society is a reflection of what we put out into it. So here's another, catch-22 circular. I'm not even sure if I'm using the term catch-22 properly. I think it's used to refer to a loop. It's not something I've ever used myself in terminology, but I'm aware that it's there. So basically, an infinite loop. If you're aware of programming, it's another infinite loop. We create the reality that in turn affects us to create who we are as ego, personality, identity constructs, which then keeps us perpetuating the condition and the condition affects us to keep perpetuating the condition, and on it goes into a hamster wheel. And that's how we're trapped in the current condition. And the only thing, care for truth. Speak the truth so that other people can care about truth. Show them the evil and immorality and wrong of their ways and in the ways of the world that reflect them and each one of us, so that they can see the need to change. Because if you're not going to bring tension, you're not going to bring conflict, you're not going to bring pressure, you're not going to bring disturbance, you're not going to bring interference into people's lives, they're never going to have the catalyst that will make them aware of the evil and immorality that is in the world and that they are contributing and participating in. They're not going to see the need to end it. You need to be aware of the evil in order to end your participation in evil. So yes, conflict, tension, pressure, interference, disturbance, we need a lot of that. It's the only way people break out of it. No one did it for me, personally in my life through vibrations, but there was Alex Jones who would put information out, and I downloaded his information that was on a torrent site before I was into any of the truth and conspiracy stuff. And like, oh, what's that? Terror Storm. Okay, download it, watch it, sometime later, and it just shook me to my core. There was chaos and evil and immorality presented as a reflection of reality. It wasn't even a reflection of me. It was a reflection of me, as it's a reflection of all. It wasn't. The information wasn't presented as a reflection of me. It was only presented as a reflection of reality for me to see the chaos and disorder in reality and how bad things were. That's what was my catalyst, my initial awakening into care for truth. So you need chaos and evil and immorality. It needs to be brought to the light of consciousness. People need to be raised from their attachment to the darkness of the calcified ego state with the light of truth to raise them up. It's the only way to get out. Otherwise, they're going to stay trapped forever. They're going to stay in the darkness of being ignorant of evil. You need to be aware of evil in order to stop evil. So after we excuse in cognitive dissonance process, excusing and denying and refusing, then we condition ourselves to accept our perceptions as reality. So it's worse than just uncritical belief where we accept perception of reality as it appears because we have no contradictions and we don't feel like verifying it. So, oh, well, there's no contradictions, I'll just accept it as it appears. It could be true or false. This is worse because your perceptions of belief, even though they contradict with what is appearing in reality, instead of just uncritically accepting the appearance of reality, now you're rejecting reality in favor of your perception of beliefs as reality. So your beliefs become reality, not truth as reality, your beliefs. Whatever you want to be reality is what becomes reality. And this is Maya delusion and the illusion. This is low frequency living. This is low frequency consciousness. Higher consciousness living comes from that middle process of critical thinking and imagination, where you actually verify through discernment, evaluation, and assessment and judgment to process the information. Because if you want to continue living in the Maya delusion and illusion, well, that's the previous infographics where we're living in the reality veil, the false perceptual construct, the systemic insulation that prevents us from acknowledging the consequences to our actions because we're living in such unreality and falsity. So yeah, we keep living in the false light construct. We're never going to see past it. That's living in Maya and the delusion. The Maya and the delusion is not how reality doesn't exist. Like some pseudo-spiritualists want to make believe. The Maya and delusion is how people can actually live in delusional perceptions of reality and create unreality continuously. They create falsity and morality. That's not. It becomes reality. They create unreality as reality. Which is a good way to end this. So I have my different comparisons at the top on the right. We have reality and actuality, and that's you're choosing perception of self and reality over the reality of actuality. So you can choose to shape your mind from reality, so have your mind be a reflection of reality, for your mind to mirror reality, shape your mind from reality, and instead when you engage in cognitive dissonance, you're choosing to shape reality from your mind. So you're going to mirror reality based on your mind. You're going to impose your mind and your beliefs onto reality, where you believe you're a god, a new ager, whose thoughts creates reality. So we have how we actually are, we can see ourselves honestly in reality, honestly, versus how we believe we are. All fantasy, beliefs, desires and wants. We want to believe we're good. We want to believe we are right. We want to believe we are moral. We want to believe we don't do evil. We want to believe we're not wrong. We want to believe we don't do immorality. We want to believe we don't do evil. So whenever we're presented with reality that shows us we're doing evil, cognitive dissonance, no, I'm not doing evil. Well, what you're doing to animals is immoral and evil and it's wrong. No, I'm not doing that and it's not wrong. Because I believe whatever I want, because I don't care for truth and morality. Hence, all the carnists out there, even people who don't consider themselves carnists and think, oh, well, factory farming is evil, but, if you kill a fish yourself and don't make it suffer, well, that's not immoral. See, this is being a god. You want to believe whatever you want. You don't understand objective morality is based on actions. It's not based on why you chose to do it because you wanted to survive or how you did it. Did the fish harm you? No? Well, then you have no right to harm it. So therefore, when you take its life, it doesn't matter if you don't give it suffering, it's still immoral and evil. You want to survive? Then go ahead and survive. Go ahead. Live in contradiction and whatever, you'll survive. There's no one that's going to hurt you, but you'll be in contradiction if you're aware of it. If not, then you'll be in false unity consciousness where you think you're united, but you're not, because you're not united with reality. So if you want to live like that, go ahead. Believe whatever the hell you want, which is something I realized even before I got Mark Pastor's info in 2011. Since my journey in 2006, went through a lot of phases, and I understood that people believe whatever they want to believe. The truth does not matter for most people. So my initial care for truth in 2006 eventually brought me to understand that greater aspect of how people don't actually care for truth. And then when I got to Mark Passio, which revived my care because I was going back into the coffin, to go back into society, my care was revived, my flame was re-sparked, I had the will and drive to go again into the care for truth and morality. And then I understood truth and morality even more, and what happened to me previously even more, and my previous experiences even more. So this is also the different comparisons, going back to the top of the infographic here, what we do in reality versus what we think we do. So again, morality versus immorality. You want to take what you think and transpose that on what you do, on what reality actually is. So you do something immoral, but you don't want to learn about objective morality, so you're just going to take what you think, your beliefs, your wishes, wants, and desires, and you're going to transpose that onto what you do. So you don't want to know truth and morality objectively, so you want to believe that you're good, moral, and right, so you're going to transpose that delusional belief, that negotiation with reality, that you're moral, good, and right, and you're going to transpose that on your immoral actions. So Nazis, SS, carnists, police, military, government, anyone who screws anyone over, anyone can tell themselves anything they want in order to negotiate with reality. And that harmonizes their disunity and disharmony with how they think reality should be and what they want from reality. So that they're trying to reduce the dissonance and transpose what they think and want and desire onto reality, so that it becomes, now that there's clearly they're not immoral, they're not evil, and they're not doing wrong because they believe themselves to be good, moral, and right, and so that's all they have to do is just take that belief of themselves, that self-image, that delusional self-image that they base aspects of their ego personality identity upon, because they're so attached to themselves, they don't understand objective detachment. And they take themselves, how they view themselves, their self-image, and they project that onto the image of the worldview. So their worldview becomes a reflection of themselves. So that's why there is a lot of projection going on in the world, whereby people are projecting things onto others that the other people aren't even doing, because they're actually talking about themselves, even though they don't even understand they're talking about themselves. So you have carnists who want to talk about how vegans are in a religion and it's all ego and all this other stuff, but they're actually talking about themselves, because carnism is the religion that they don't want to objectively face in reality, in truth and morality, and understand how it is completely based on belief that we continue doing these things. They don't want to understand that it's an ego calcification in darkness and falsity, in a refusal to care for truth, to understand truth and morality in the depth required to understand how animals matter morally. They don't want to do that. Another aspect of comparison is knowing in reality versus believing. You can believe whatever you want and transpose that onto reality, project it onto reality, reflect it onto reality, and then your beliefs become what you think you know. So you have people parading around the planet who think they know things, but it's only beliefs. Why? Because they have not engaged in this process of reality versus perception of reality. They have not gone through the critical thinking and imagination process to process information more than the initial preliminary thought processing, which would derive contradictions. Then you need to process it more. But they just take their beliefs, whatever they want, and it becomes what they know. So then they say, I know this, I know that, I know A, B, C, X, Y, Z, but they don't know anything. That's why Mark Passio says, know nothings, they know nothing. They think they know, but it's actually negative knowledge. It's knowledge that is false. Knowledge that is something that is false is knowledge, and something that is true is knowledge that is true. Something that is false is knowledge that is false. It's still knowledge. So 2 plus 2 is 5 is false. So that's knowledge that something is false, okay? So there's knowledge of something being true and knowledge of something being false. But what they do, the false knowledge, the negative knowledge that they take in as truth, is taking the knowledge that is false, that can be recognized as being false, in truth as being false, to recognize it honestly in truth of reality, that the knowledge of that statement that is false. So the knowledge of a falsity will become a truth. You understand? The knowledge of a falsity, the 2 plus 2 equals 5, you can recognize that as being false. For them, they will take that falsity and they will make it a truth. And they will know it's a truth. That's what I'm explaining here. You believe it, and then you know it. Not that it's actually a known thing, but you believe that you know it, because all you have are beliefs. But you're transposing your beliefs onto reality, which reality is supposed to represent the knowns. You see, knowledge and grammar and input comes from reality. That's what affects us. So the knowns in reality are being replaced by your perceptions of self and reality, by your mind shaping reality, by believing what you want to believe, thinking what you want to think, and putting what you think and what you believe onto what is done and known. So you're replacing your beliefs with knowledge. You're replacing knowledge with your own beliefs. You're taking your beliefs and overriding the knowledge of reality. And that creates an unreality as reality. You think you're living in reality, but you're living in an unreality. And if you want more comparisons of this, presentation I did after this was on natural law of boundary conditions. And that one has, I think there's 10 or something. So here I have 5 things, reality versus unreality. On the other one I have truth versus falsity. A bunch of things. Just different dichotomies of true self versus false self. Real life versus false life. So you'd have, I didn't write them there, but there's more. There's being awake and asleep, there's being alive and dead, there's being in the coffin, in the tomb, or there's being revived and reborn. There's different ways looking at it. So that's the end of that. So perception of reality is essentially our worldview. So we need to align it with reality, or live in the fantasy of our subjective reality and think that that subjective reality is actually reality as it is. So the next infographic, number 14, this is perceptual distractions. So in the first image, we can't see much ahead. There's many distractions. Everything's blurred out. Then in the second one, we have more visible. There's something there. Rather than just a blurry thing, we can see there's a bit of distinction. There's something in front of us, right? There's something in the middle. Then in the last image, we have clear sight. We know what is coming at us. You know what's coming at you. So here I wanted to replace Landwasser with natural law to mean it's the natural law train, and it's coming right at you. Because when we have perceptual distractions, this is the whole point of this infographic, when we have perceptual distractions, things that distract us, so if we go on the left here, we have church, jobs, sports, economy, government, scandals, healthcare, immigration, gossip, entertainment, TV, movies, the missing plane. In 2014, there was a bunch of missing plane crap. There was the latest gadget or the latest social novelty, whatever's new. We're always attracted to whatever's new. So these are all perceptual distractions that prevent us from seeing reality as it is. You can imagine, this is also likened to the new zombies in our world. People with cell phones who walk around with their cell phones and they look at their cell phones. Do you think they have a good perception of reality? You're walking around looking at a small area of screen. You're not looking at what's ahead of you, what's coming at you. Well, this is why they're zombies and they're dead. This is why they run into people and they run into poles and shit, because they're not looking at reality. They don't have the perception. They're looking at they're pigeonholed into a little narrow view of reality. That's what these distractions do. Everyone is involved in these distractions. Everyone, it's part of the news. You watch the news, you'll get caught up into caring about these distractions. You don't even need to watch the news. It's part of culture. It's part of our society. It's part of the ego personality identity construct of Western society and pretty much the whole world. Accept government, accept economics, accept religion, church. Then there's all the distractions that we're told. They always keep coming up, but we can never get rid of them because we're not developed in consciousness. We're not caring for truth and morality. But that's a big mystery to people why we can't get rid of things. The scandals, the healthcare, the immigration. There's all these problems. So you keep people distracted with problems. You keep people distracted with how good things are. You keep people distracted with entertainment and movies. These are all distractions. So you can't see things coming at you. Ain't happening. So in the middle, we have more conscious awareness of reality. And this allows you to see down the road, down the pipe, and at the future. Something's coming at you. Maybe we need to move out of the way. Because before it was a blur, but now there's something there. Hey, wait. There wasn't something there, but now there is something there. So yeah, maybe you should move out of the way. Once you see something that wasn't there, that now is there, it's an indication, well, something wasn't, and now it is. Uh-oh. Maybe there's something there. It's a little bit of a warning. Maybe you're getting away from your entertainment distractions, and you're starting to see reality a bit more. You're developing curiosity and questioning and doubting things. Maybe you need to move out of the way. Maybe there's a problem with the world. Maybe we need to do something about it, right? Maybe we need to move out of the way, which is representative of action, to do something. Or else you're going to get hit. So either you do something new, you get out of the way, or you keep doing the same thing, you keep walking in your narrow perception as a dead blind fool, well, you're going to get hit by whatever's coming at you. Even though you're not aware it's totally there. But then finally, someone who sees a lot of reality sees where we are headed and sees what is coming down the line. So in this position, You can stay where you are and get annihilated by natural law by staying where you are and continuing in your hard-headed current condition and keep perpetuating the same condition or worse. Eventually, natural law train is going to run you over. Why? Because you're doing it to yourself. You're running yourself over. Maybe the next generations, your descendants, whatever. It's all because we let it happen now that it's going to happen in the future. It's all because other people in the past let it happen and let things get created, that what exists now has happened because of the past, and what will happen in the future will happen because of what's now and what happened in the past. It's all up to us. We need to act. So if you stay there and you keep doing the current condition, you keep with your perceptual distractions, you're just going to get knocked around into oblivion. But if you actually wake up and see what's in front of you, care for truth and morality, and see the current condition, see where we're headed, what's coming down the line, then we can step out of the way, step out of the current path, that current track that we're on that's leading to a head-on collision with ourselves in self-destruction. This is all self-destruction. Natural law is all ourselves. We do it to ourselves. We judge, offend, and insult ourselves by our own actions. It's just a mirror. The natural law train is just a mirror of ourselves. We're heading in the direction that we are heading, and it's our own enslavement, our own suffering, and our own destruction, and our own annihilation. Now, if you choose to care for truth and morality, you can choose to walk the way and the path, which is the right way and the right path towards the wisdom of right action, and that is by caring for truth and morality to learn about how to do that. And then you're actually going to be able to step off the path and do something new. So to continue reading the infographic. So keep them on the hamster wheel, away from facing their shadow. From facing their shadows, actions, and beliefs. Have them believe they are on the right track. So keep them thinking, keep people thinking you're on the right track. That you're not creating a mirror reflection of yourself that will lead to your own destruction. That this track, every step you take forward on the wrong track is bringing that train closer to a head-on collision with you. Every step we take in the wrong direction is a step away from the right direction. There's always a way back to the right track, but it's up to us to choose it in free will. Because right now we're choosing free will to do the wrong thing. We're walking on the wrong track, and every step we take on the wrong track is leading us to more self-inflicted suffering, more self-imposed enslavement, and more chaos, more destruction, more everything bad that we don't want, that we say we don't want, but we keep getting it. We're the ones that keep walking. Right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. Here we go, marching like soldiers. Ignorant little fucks. Sorry for my language again there. We're just walking and walking down the wrong path. Blind, all these distractions. We're just walking down to our own annihilation. Walking along. And then boom! When it hits you, it's too late. When it hits you, when you are ignorant and you are distracted from reality, when it hits you, it hit you. You can't get out of the way. It hit you. It's done. It hit you. You can't undo what has happened. You can only do new things in the future, which is why causality and free will consciousness is important, because once you create an effect and you don't change, well, you're just going to get that effect back. So even though in karma there is a delay where I might not experience it, but it might be 100 years or 200 years for the descendants of the true self, individuated into individual units of consciousness and body vehicles. They might feel it 200 years from now, but there's a way to prevent them from feeling the pain, and that's for us to correct it right now. We can get on the right track. There are certain insulation aspects, as I've been explaining, and the conduction or the insulation. It can be conducted quickly or it can take some time to reciprocate. Not all consequences to our actions are immediately available to everyone to understand. But they can be understood, and especially if you have insulation, you're not going to be able to understand the consequences of your actions because you're being insulated from them. So the consequences to your actions will continue to be perpetuated in ignorance of yourself, everyone on the planet, because of the insulation that prevents us from facing the reality of the consequences of our actions. The insulation, this is another insulation. The distractions, they prevent us from seeing reality. And we have the system we live in. It's another insulation. There's artificial insulation methods to prevent us from being able to get back on the right track. We're prevented from seeing how bad things are, how wrong things are, and the need to change, how we're stuck in a hamster loop to get back on the right track. We just don't see it. So they need to make us believe we're on the right track. They need to make us believe that we're moral and we're good and we're right, which is very easy. People already want to believe that. They don't want to face themselves in the mirror and face how they're wrong and how they're immoral and how they're creating evil. No. So it's not even that. You don't even have to get people to believe they're on the right track. They automatically want to believe they're on the right track, no matter what they do anyways. It doesn't matter to them. See, that part is hardly a necessity, to have people believe they're on the right track. They already think, by default, of existing in this existence, by living the life they live, they already think they're on the right track, because they have their comfort and convenience. Other people in poorer countries, they might be more aware of how they're not on the right track because of how degraded their standard of living is by comparison to Western countries which have more comfort and convenience. The comfort and convenience, I've written about this before, it's part of the pleasure trap that prevents you from recognizing evil and the need for change. So as long as you're comfortable, you're not going to see the wrongs going on because you have your pleasures and distractions. So that's what I wrote here. You can't see anything coming down the lane. You're too busy with self and pleasure of distractions. So the comfort and convenience prevents you from changing. That's the system we live in, is to maximize comfort and convenience and pleasure in order to keep you in an insulated capacity to prevent you from facing reality as it is. So why is it blurry? Because we are not looking. Just like I gave an example of the brain-dead zombies nowadays with their cell phones, and they're not even aware of where they're going. They can't look where they're going because they're looking at something else. That's what a distraction does. That's what I mentioned in Language and Reality Part 4 on... Part 3 on occulting and encrypting reality through word magic. So that the magician is trying to divert your attention through distractions so that you're not looking where you need to look. And that's essentially what it is. It's all a big magic trick on our minds. Mind control, magic trick. It's all a consciousness game for them. It's a big trick. Look where you want them to look and prevent them from looking where you don't want them to look. And then that's essentially control of reality, which is what a magician does. They create an unreality and present it to us as reality because we get tricked by specific distractions of our attention into seeing what they want us to see and not seeing things they don't want us to see. Which is exactly what I'm talking about in this, how our perceptions of reality and reality function. It's all a big magic trick. This is the real magic, and language is the foundation of it. Good or bad, it's a tool. But if you don't know how to use language because you're ignorant, then it's going to be used in the dark force capacity to manipulate you. And that's the magic. And there's greater forms of magic after that. The artificial constructs we create and everything. Anyways, to continue with the infographic. Why is it blurry? Because we're not looking. It is not in conscious awareness. It's a fuzz of peripheral vision. We're not directly looking at it. So you're not looking at the truth, you're not looking at morality. It's not in your conscious awareness if you're not looking at it. If it's fuzzy, it's not in your conscious awareness, it's just a peripheral. So conscious awareness, how we feel reality. You need to be consciously aware of reality in order to feel it, in order to respond to it and do something. That's why you need to feel reality to care about it. Do you feel the reality of the Israeli crimes of Palestinians? Do you feel the reality of the animal holocaust? When you have enough detail, clarity, and definition, then you have enough conscious awareness to feel reality accurately. When we see and feel the reality, we can act to do something. To change is to move. See, so when we see and feel the reality, then we can act to do something, because the feeling is the caring that motivates us. So to change is to move, to do something, to change is to move. More conscious awareness is more depth of defining reality. Natural law is on track, a course set in motion by us. So if you want to see natural law in reality, if you want to understand truth and morality reflected in that, if you want to understand truth and morality reflected in reality, then gain more conscious awareness, more depth of definition of reality. Then you're going to see natural law in operation. You're going to see truth. So natural law is on track, a course set in motion by us. We can only stop it by changing. That is to say, movement is change. So if you want to change, you have to move. Get off the track. Get off this track of creating our own natural law train of disaster, and get on the other track of creating a train of order and true peace and freedom. If we stay on the same course and ignore reality, it will simply hit us unexpectedly and smack us down hard. That's what I said earlier. You're not looking at it, eventually it's just going to hit you, and there's nothing you can do about it once it's at that point. The point for change is before it happens. Once it happens, it already happened. You can go look more into causality, consciousness, and natural law from the previous presentation before this one. That's the way it works. It's up to us to change it. That's up to us to move track. And if we don't move track, then the track we're heading on is what we're going to get. The train is going to hit us. But when we're doing things right, or we're going to create the train of the good things we want, we're not going to receive back the bad because we're not creating the bad. The natural law train is delayed by insulation. Eventually it catches up in our life, or collective humanity in the future. It builds up pressure and releases. This is what I'm talking about, the insulation. The insulation can keep things away, in an aspect of delaying and time dilation, where actions that are built up for the past few hundred years, they can't culminate in the full manifestations of consequences because they require a build-up as well. Now, as soon as we did one thing, one poisoning of the environment, one thing wrong, we could have corrected it immediately and prevented it from going in the future, but we didn't, and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. Eventually, all of that evil gets built up as a pressure in a net. And I also have this explained in natural law boundary conditions, where we as consciousness spheres are supposed to stay within the confines of the material reality, the four elements of material, which is representative of the four dimensions of reality. We are supposed to stay within the boundaries of reality, which are natural laws for our own betterment. If we set our boundaries beyond those of reality, then we're overstepping the boundaries of natural moral law, and we're trying to be gods ourselves, trying to be arbiters of truth. And that's living in the false self. And that also builds up pressure. Now, if after so much time of living as a false self, overstepping the bounds of natural law, eventually the pressure builds up and a spring-back elastic effect is produced where it's released. And this is where the smackdown happens. At some point, the pressure builds up and it pops, like a balloon, you could say. But instead of popping, it's like a fulcrum point. A fulcrum. You go to a certain point. At a certain point, there's a maximum expenditure of energy counter to gravity, and then it can't go up any higher, and it goes back the other way. Well, this is the same thing I'm talking about in insulation and a bubble of natural law holding the self of free will. And if your free will goes beyond the boundaries of natural law, well, it creates pressure, and eventually, in the aggregate, so much pressure is built up within that system. We all live on one system, Earth. Within that system, eventually the smackdown comes, the pressure, the tension, the conflict comes back as an intense force that will maybe completely annihilate us because of that build-up over time. Whereas if you only had a few actions over a short period of time, it's more easily correctable, and probably the manifestations of the consequences would not have emerged in such a visible way. And you certainly wouldn't have the big smackdown coming down the line. So you can prevent karma from happening, and you can correct karma by correcting things that are wrong that have already happened. You correct yourself to not do those wrongs again, and the things that are wrong can be righted. And that's the way to correct karma. Here we have insulated bubbles of reality. So more of the insulation with natural law. So we reap what we sow, which is natural law. Manifested reality reciprocated on us. This is collective karma. We're all in this together. That's where me, you, and others, we output, and it gets we sow this and it gets reaped back on us, which is the way it is. Now, so in normal situations of direct influence, we have nowhere to go but to be affected by reality. We are all affected by what we choose to live by. What we create into the world affects us back. We all get hit by the general aggregate consequences of the behaviors we live by on this planet. So if people launch nukes on the planet, well, it doesn't matter if you didn't launch the nukes. The whole planet's going to get blown up. Understand? So you do right, and you get right. You do wrong, and you get wrong. So it works individually in your own life, and it works collectively because things can happen in an aggregate outside of you, even if you are the only one abstaining from what 7 billion people are doing. If 7 billion people are doing wrong, you are still going to get wrong, even if you are trying to do right. We act and receive the result. First we act, we send out, we sow, and then we get it back. It sends back to us. You reap what you sow. Energy out is what you get back. This is truth or consequence, be right or go wrong. Do you want the left hand, do you want the right hand of truth and right, or do you want the left hand of negative consequences and going wrong? You can either be right, or you're going to go wrong. You can either have the truth, or you can have falsity. You can have order, or you can have chaos. There's degrees in between, but it's always a one-way aspiration. It's not a balanced, blind correspondence where you've got to balance it. No. It's one way. You're aspiring one way, and if you're not aspiring one way, then you're in stagnation and entropy, and you're heading down the other way. So if you're not in the one way of truth and morality and right and good, well, then you're heading in the other way. So on the right, we have reaping what we sow, natural law. And this is insulated capacity, manifested reality reciprocating on us. Now instead of collective karma, where we're all in this together, now we have delayed karma. Some are not in this yet. So me and you, we're going to output, but because we live in a particular zone of comfort, we live in a particular system of living whereby certain aspects of reality are insulated from us, we're going to have a diffused, see that diffused arrow? I made it squiggly so to represent that it wouldn't be as strong. I guess I could have done a dashed line. But because of the reality bubble, the effects that we output onto the world, we don't feel them back as strongly as other people in the world. So this is third world countries compared to first world countries, where we're doing whatever we want, we exploit, dominate, take over, And the little people who make the system run, we're all the cogs in the machine that make it run. So me and you, even though we're outputting and we're feeding this beast, what we get back from feeding the beast of evil and immorality, we don't get back much evil and immorality. Yeah, we get back some, but it's not much. Because this is, again, it's playing on the true unity and us versus them, is and the Satanism of my truth, my survival, my freedom. As long as it's not happening to you, you're okay, you're in your comfort and convenience of your reality bubble, right? These insulated bubbles of reality. And then you don't feel as much of the repercussions to the actions, the consequences to your actions, as other people in the world, because you live in an artificially insulated system that protects you from the harm you create, while other people who are not in the system will feel the consequences of your actions much more harshly. Especially since there are those who are targeted by those actions that you put out, or that your government or your country put out, whatever. And then there's those who aren't even targeted but have reciprocal effect through what happens to other countries and the geopolitical and global situation and all things. So other people are more affected than you in your little insulated bubble of reality, because you live in false self and you're not even aware of how you're projecting wrong onto others. It's all Satanism. My freedom, my survival, my truth. The others that are hurt, oh well. Other animals, oh well. In some cases, we have insulation bubbles around us. Some of us don't feel the full effects, or any at all, yet. When we create systems of dependence and do not understand the consequences that are produced outside of our current perception, we can be insulated for some time in this attempt to separate ourselves within a system and particular worldview. Eventually, the system cannot hold back the consequences that we push onto others. Eventually, the system fails to provide its insulatory capacity, and visible problems manifest to reflect the wrong path and ways of living. So in the beginning of America and the United States, and they were all prosperous in the 1800s and the early 20th century, which made them the powerhouse of the world. After Germany, when they collapsed, the States came on top because they had the production and everything was going good, but they weren't aware of the consequences of their actions and exploitation. So they were insulated. Everything was really good and things kept getting better, but things weren't going so good for other countries that were being exploited, But that didn't matter to people, because as long as they got theirs, they got their comfort and convenience, and they were happy, they had their pleasure, then it didn't matter what was happening in the rest of the world. So next image is circular reasoning deflection bubble of denial. So here we have reality input, for example, X behavior or action that you choose to engage in is immoral. So I've mentioned this before. Tell people things that they're doing immoral, but like the previous insulation bubble, it goes around it goes around them. The truth of reality that's input, the higher frequency in blue, goes around their lower conceptual frequency, lower consciousness frequency in red. So it's a deflection bubble of denial. So they think, I am a good person, which is a belief, therefore I don't do immoral things. And I don't do immoral things, therefore I'm a good person. So this is a version of the infinite loop I'm talking about. So reality input, this action you're taking is immoral, but they already consider themselves a good person that doesn't do immoral things. Therefore, in the conclusion is reality is deflected. So they're going to say, instead of accepting responsibility for the immoral acts they engage against others, they prefer to choose to believe in their beliefs and conceptions and worldview and self-image. So they're going to say, it doesn't matter what you say, I'm a good person, I'm pure-hearted, I live in the heart, I follow my inner voice, I'm connected to God, etc. Therefore, what I do can't be immoral, you are wrong. And this is all based on belief. I've actually had someone say something to this, similar to this to me. These aren't my own words, but they've told me that They're pure-hearted, even though they're a carnist. They told me they're pure-hearted. I told them they're doing wrong things, that they're engaged in immorality. And the only thing they had to tell me was they're pure-hearted, and that was just their belief, because they were someone that believes that they learn from nature and they learn from God, and they follow their emotions, and they're so connected, and there's no objective truth, there's no absolute truth, there's no objective morality. They're a solipsist, they're a moral relativist, and that's why they can believe whatever they want. That's why they believe they're pure-hearted, even though they do immoral things, because they don't actually understand morality, because they're a moral relativist. And even if they weren't moral relativists and they believed in morality, they still don't understand morality objectively, because they still believe, I'm pure-hearted. Well, how can you be pure-hearted if you're doing wrong things? You can't. There is no pure-hearted. There's no pure good. There's no pure morality. Those things cannot be had by us. Get them out of your head. This was the same person who told me, you can't be perfect. And then they would tell me, when it related to them, that they were already perfect, because they're pure-hearted. And, truth doesn't matter. Reality doesn't matter. Those are just words, because language and logic are flawed. So the words coming out of your mouth, well, they don't affect me, because I'm God, and I'm connected to God, and I'm pure-hearted, so I know that I'm a good person, and I don't do immoral things, so why are you even talking to me? See, that's how stupid these people are. How can you even talk to someone like that? No thank you, I'm moving out, which is what I did. Get out of there. And then I made my site, and I started, expressing my understanding to people who were willing to understand. Anyways, no true care for truth or morality, all subjective excuses, justifications, and validation to sustain and maintain the delusional self-image. It's not facing truth, reality, or ourselves' honesty. It's fear, apathy, ignorance, and cowardice. You have a fear for truth. You're not able to face it. I'm talking about the mirror and facing ourselves, so I already talked about that in the audio already. So the next image is the power differential. So when we have a failure to understand causality, consciousness, and natural moral law, which are the minor, micro, function and behavior of individual consciousness, which is how we operate, and then natural laws governing the consequences of behavior, the major and micro, when we fail to understand that, which was in the previous presentation, then we're going to have perceptual errors with reality. We're going to have perceptual distortions. Our perception of reality is not going to match objective reality. So, through a restriction of us understanding ourselves and natural law, not understanding causality, consciousness, and morality and natural law, it creates a power differential. Because people who don't know at the bottom are confused. And this is the ignorance of most people, where we focus on appearances, which I've been talking about in the previous image. It's all focus on appearances. People just want to stay focused on appearances. That's what's projected for them. They're not looking at the substance of reality, and they're just looking at the appearances, the facade, the illusion that's presented to them, the unreality from minds of men that is cast as a spell of magic, and that illusion is accepted as reality. Well, those are all appearances. People focus on the appearances of all those distractions, all the meaningless shit. So they're unknown. They don't know the future. They don't know anything. They don't know the minor or micro, the major or macro. That hidden occulted knowledge is unknown on the right. The hidden occulted knowledge is unknown. That means they're confused. They're ignorant, so most people focused on appearances. Now, at the top of knowledge, and the top of people, and it's also the power differential on this planet, you have most people at the bottom, and you have few people at the top who actually know. The hidden occult knowledge is actually known to them, and it empowers them. They know how to create more effectively in reality, and this can be used in a dark capacity and a light capacity. So, very few people are up here, even in the dark occultists. Very few know everything about it. Most of the dark people and the masses are engaging in evil, and cops and military, well, they're still ignorant idiots. They don't know this information, but the dark occultists do know it, and they use it in the dark force. And there's light occultists, light magicians, doing good work, trying to educate people. And they're empowered with what they know about how consciousness functions and how natural law functions. This is the understanding of a few people, and this is the depth of substance. They've gone into the substance of reality, the substance of ourselves, the core of our being, and the substance of reality to see how reality functions and the consequences of our behavior, and then we learn how to create properly. So knowledge to be known is integrated into ourselves when we're at the top. That hidden occulted knowledge is integrated, brought into ourselves, and the understanding is known and embodied. So knowledge of the functionality, behavior, motivations, drive, and influence of the mind, psyche, and consciousness empowers one in life. Ignorance of important knowledge is detrimental to survival and well-being. Those who have this knowledge and use it with their dark care have the power to manipulate and control the minds of the confused. This is the power differential that results when, in the previous presentation, you don't learn about causality, consciousness, and natural law. What results is what was earlier in this presentation, where you have problems understanding reality, and you live in a delusional reality, an illusion of reality, in the Maya. And what results in the end is you have a power differential from this ignorance of occulted knowledge, whereby you're kept at the bottom, enslaved and oppressed, and other people are clever and they feed you information that you want to believe, that makes you feel good about yourself, but it's not based in truth, and it just keeps you further enslaved and confused. Because they feed you lies, but they feed you the truth to convince you of the lies, because you're uncritically accepting it based on superficial appearances. But if you would go to try to understand the depth of the substance of what they're telling you, you would recognize contradictions and conflict in the information they present you, and you would see that some of it is true and some of it is false. And if you don't accept the truth with the falsity, then you're not going to be confused. You can understand the truth and the falsity and accept them both as the truth of current conditions that exist. Murder exists, bad things exist. They don't need to exist, but they do. And that's the truth of the condition. It's not the truth of the right way to live, the right way in the path, truth level 2, but it is truth level 1. Alright, I guess I'll end it there. And thank you very much for listening. There was the previous presentation on causality, consciousness, and natural law before this one. Just did it before recording this, so take a listen to that. They're pretty much joined together. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day. Take care.